Think medieval nuns lived quiet lives of prayer and gentle contemplation, far removed from the harsh realities of the world. What if some of these holy women also commanded fortresses, their convents rising like defiant castles against a tumultuous backdrop? Prepare to have your understanding of the Middle Ages, specifically from the 10th to the 15th centuries, turned on its head. Number 1. Abbaye Royale de Fontevraud, France. Deep in the heart of Anjou, France lay an extraordinary monastic complex that defied simple categorization. The Abbaye Royale de Fontevraud was not merely a convent, it was a sprawling, self-contained medieval city, a testament to immense royal patronage, and a structure that, by its sheer scale and strategic importance, functioned as a formidable stronghold in an era rife with conflict. Founded in 1101 by the enigmatic preacher Robert of Arbresel, Fontevraud soon became the head of a unique monastic order where both men and women lived under the authority of a powerful abbess. This dual-gender arrangement, governed by a woman, was revolutionary for its time, and the physical manifestation of its power was equally groundbreaking. Fontevraud's location itself hinted at its strategic value. Situated near the confluence of the Loire and Vienne rivers, it commanded a significant position within the Angevin Empire, a vast dominion controlled by the Plantagenet kings of England, who were also dukes of Anjou. Its proximity to major waterways meant it could control trade routes and exert influence over a wide region. This strategic placement was not accidental. It was a deliberate choice by its founders and patrons who understood the importance of location for both spiritual and temporal power. The physical defenses of Fontevraud, while perhaps not exhibiting the classic military features of a knight's castle with soaring keeps and aggressive machicolations, were nonetheless substantial and designed for long-term self-preservation. Complex was enclosed by massive perimeter walls, some reaching impressive heights and considerable thickness. These walls were built not just to keep the outside world at bay for spiritual reasons, but to protect the immense wealth, valuable archives, and numerous inhabitants within. Historical accounts speak of these walls being reinforced over centuries, growing sturdier with each era of instability. Chroniclers from the 13th century sometimes referred to the abbey's robust defenses when describing local skirmishes or movements of troops through the region, noting that Fontevraud was considered a place of refuge that could withstand minor assaults. Within the vast enclosure, the various monastic buildings, the grand abbey church, the cloister, the chapter house, the refectory, the kitchens, and separate quarters for the nuns, monks, and lay brothers were arranged in a coherent, defensible layout. Church itself, a Romanesque masterpiece, possessed fixed stone walls and narrow high windows that, while primarily for light and spiritual atmosphere, also served a defensive purpose against invaders. Sheer mass and the solidity of its construction made it a formidable redoubt within the complex. The wealth of Fontevraud was staggering, accumulated through centuries of royal donations, land grants, and widespread properties. This wealth allowed the abbesses to undertake extensive building projects, not just for aesthetic or spiritual purposes, but for practical protection. Construction and maintenance of such massive defensive structures required substantial financial resources and a large workforce, both of which Fontevraud commanded. The ability to fund such projects spoke volumes about its economic power, a power that underpinned its defensive capabilities. The abbess of Fontevraud was no mere spiritual leader. She was a feudal lord in her own right, controlling vast estates, exercising judicial power, and even having vassals. This temporal authority meant that she was responsible for the protection of her lands and her people, just like any duke or count. Historical documents show abbesses engaged in negotiations with local lords and even kings regarding rights, territories, and protection. During times of war, such as the 100 Years' War that swept through France, Fontevraud, like other major monasteries, was often a target due to its riches, or a strategic point to be held by warring factions. Its formidable nature meant that it was rarely easily taken. While there are no dramatic tales of nuns wielding swords from battlements, the very existence of Fontevraud as a safe haven in the dangerous world highlights its fortress-like function. It provided refuge for countless people during periods of conflict, not just its own religious community, but also local villagers, nobility, and even royal families who sometimes sought sanctuary within its walls. The strong gatehouses, while serving as points of entry and control, also functioned as primary defensive positions, manned by the abbey's lay servants, or perhaps even a small force of guards maintained by the abbess. The historical records from the 14th century, during the prolonged Anglo-French conflicts, sometimes mention the care taken by the abbess to ensure the security of the abbey. Provisions would be stockpiled, the gates strengthened, and watchmen posted. The very presence of such a vast fortified complex deterred many potential raiders who would often seek easier targets than to try to breach the formidable walls of Fontevraud. It stood as a symbol of enduring power, both spiritual and temporal, in an age of constant flux. The fact that the Plantagenet kings, Henry II, Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard the Lionheart, and Isabella of Angoulême, chose Fontevraud as their final resting place, shows its prestige and its enduring status as a royal stronghold. Not just of faith, but of strategic importance. Its sheer size, its robust construction, and its capacity to provide refuge in turbulent times firmly place Fontevraud in the ranks of medieval convents that served as de facto fortresses. Number 2. Wienhausen Abbey, Germany. Tucked away in the serene countryside of Lower Saxony, Germany, lies Wienhausen Abbey, a Cistercian nunnery founded in the 13th century. At first glance, its brick architecture and tranquil courtyards might seem to embody the peaceful spiritual life one expects from a medieval convent. However, a closer examination of its history and its surviving structures reveals a resilience and an intentional fortification that allowed it to survive centuries of turmoil, often functioning as a robust defensive complex in a region frequently beset by conflict. Wienhausen Abbey was established around 1229 by Agnes von Landsberg, a noblewoman, and quickly grew in prominence. Unlike some convents built within already fortified towns, Wienhausen was initially a rural foundation. This meant it had to provide its own security in an era where rural monasteries and convents were often prime targets for marauding knights, disgruntled peasants, or rival lords. The sisters and their patrons understood this inherent vulnerability from the outset, and the abbey's construction reflected a clear defensive mindset. The most striking defensive feature of Wienhausen is its remarkably intact and robust outer wall, built primarily of brick, a common material in the region. These walls were not mere enclosures, but formidable barriers. They were substantial in thickness, reaching several feet in many places, and rose to considerable heights designed to deter direct assault. Archaeological surveys and historical building records confirm that these walls were reinforced multiple times throughout the medieval period, indicating a consistent concern for security. The use of brick, while not as outwardly imposing as stone, offered excellent resistance to fire and blunt force, especially when built to such a mass. Access to the abbey complex was controlled by a strong gatehouse. This gatehouse was more than just a ceremonial entrance. It was a defensible structure, often featuring heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron, and possibly a portcullis, though specific details vary over time. The gatehouse would have been manned by lay servants or guards responsible for screening visitors and securing the entrance, especially during times of heightened threat. Its design would have incorporated elements to make it difficult to force entry, such as arrow slits or murder holes, allowing defenders to repel attackers from above. The abbey buildings themselves, particularly the church and the chapter house, were constructed with a solidity that doubled as a defensive measure. Their thick walls, small high-set windows, and heavy doors provided internal protection. In the event of a breach of the outer walls, these structures could serve as secondary strongholds, allowing the nuns and valuable assets to retreat and make a final stand. This multi-layered defense was a common strategy in medieval fortifications, and Wienhausen's layout clearly reflected this principle. Throughout its history, Wienhausen was no stranger to external threats. The medieval period in Germany was marked by frequent feuds between local nobility, peasant uprisings, and religious conflicts. The abbey, being a wealthy and influential institution, was often caught in the crossfire. Historical documents from the 14th and 15th centuries occasionally record instances where the abbey closed its gates, prepared for a siege, or provided refuge to the local populace during periods of unrest. For example, during the Lunenburg War of Succession in the 14th century, the abbey's defenses would have been crucial for its survival and the protection of its inhabitants and surrounding tenants. The abbess in these times would have been responsible for organizing the defense, provisioning the community, and negotiating with armed parties. One of the most significant challenges to Wienhausen's existence came during the Reformation in the 16th century, though its defensive architecture was honed during earlier medieval conflicts. Even as the religious landscape shifted, the abbey's physical strength played a role in its unique survival. While many monasteries in the region were dissolved, Wienhausen managed to navigate the turmoil, partly due to its robust defenses, which made it a less appealing target for aggressive reformers, and partly due to the steadfastness of its community and the political acumen of its abbesses. The physical resilience of the structure mirrored the spiritual resilience of its occupants. The wealth of Wienhausen Abbey, accumulated through landholdings, tithes, and donations, was substantial. This financial independence allowed the nuns to maintain and improve their defensive structures. They had the means to hire skilled masons and laborers for construction and to purchase necessary supplies for defense, such as provisions for a prolonged siege. The abbess, as the head of this wealthy institution, had significant temporal power, negotiating treaties, managing estates, and ensuring the safety of her community. This included the strategic upkeep of the abbey's fortifications. Chroniclers from the region sometimes mention Wienhausen in their accounts of local power struggles, often describing it as a strong point that could not be easily overcome. Strong walls and strategic location made it a valuable asset for whatever faction managed to control the surrounding territory, and a formidable obstacle for those who sought to pillage its riches. Convent became a known sanctuary, not just for spiritual retreat, but for physical safety in a dangerous world, a testament to its fortress-like capabilities. Wienhausen Abbey, therefore, stands as a quiet but powerful example of a medieval convent that built and maintained robust defenses, allowing it to withstand the storms of history and endure for centuries, preserving its unique heritage within its fortified walls. Number 3. Santa Clara Monastery, Tordesillas, Spain. Perched dramatically on a cliff overlooking the Douro River in Tordesillas, Spain, stands the Santa Clara Monastery. This isn't just any medieval convent, it's a site steeped in royal history, built upon the foundations of a former royal palace, and consequently, it inherited and maintained formidable defensive features that allowed it to function as a fortress throughout its long and eventful existence. The very architecture of Santa Clara tells a tale of power, prestige, and protection. The origins of Santa Clara are rooted in the Alcazar Real, a royal palace constructed by King Alfonso XI of Castile in the 14th century. This palace was strategically located to command the river crossing and the surrounding fertile plains, making it inherently defensible. In 1363, Alfonso XI's son, King Peter the Cruel, gifted the palace to his daughters Beatrice, Isabella, and Philippa, who converted it into a poor Clare convent. The transformation from a secular royal residence to a monastic one meant that the impressive fortifications of the original palace were not dismantled but integrated and adapted, providing the nuns with an exceptionally secure home. The most evident sign of Santa Clara's fortress nature is its powerful perimeter walls. These walls, built for a king's defense, are thick and high, constructed of sturdy stone, designed to withstand siege weapons of the medieval era. They feature a number of towers, including a prominent main tower, characteristic of a military stronghold rather than a typical convent. These towers provided vantage points for observation and defense, allowing for clear views of the river and surrounding landscape, essential for anticipating threats. The main entrance to the complex would have been through a heavily guarded gatehouse, reinforced with multiple layers of defense. Such gatehouses, typical of castles, would have incorporated elements like a portcullis, a drawbridge, if a moat or ditch was present, and possibly murder holes from which defenders could pour down projectiles or hot liquids onto attackers. While the convent's daily life centered on prayer, the very infrastructure was designed for defense, a stark reminder of the tumultuous times in which it existed. The location itself, atop a cliff face, provided a natural defense, making it difficult to approach from the riverside. Any attack would have to contend with the steep ascent and the formidable walls, significantly hindering the mobility and effectiveness of an invading force. This natural advantage was intelligently exploited by the original royal builders and meticulously maintained by the nuns who inherited the site. Throughout its history, Santa Clara was closely tied to the Castilian monarchy. This royal patronage meant continuous investment in the upkeep and enhancement of the complex, including its defensive structures. Kings and queens understood the strategic value of such a strong point, even if it was a convent. Could serve as a secure royal retreat in times of danger, a repository for royal treasures and archives, or even a staging point for military operations. Historical records indicate that members of the royal family did indeed take refuge within its walls during various political upheavals and civil wars that plagued Castile in the 14th and 15th centuries. One notable event that took Santa Clara's fortress role occurred during the Trastamara Civil War in the mid-14th century. While not directly targeted as a convent in the traditional sense, its royal associations and formidable defenses made it a key site. During this conflict, the original Alcazar convent was a point of strategic importance, with various factions attempting to control or lay siege to Tordesillas. The strength of its walls and its elevated position meant that any attempt to take it would be a costly and time-consuming endeavor. Chroniclers of the period often mention the difficulty of assaulting fortified positions, like the one at Tordesillas, a clear nod to its inherent strength. The abbess of Santa Clara, often a woman of noble birth with strong royal connections, would have been a powerful figure not just spiritually, but also temporally. She would have overseen the maintenance of the fortifications, managed the resources for defense, and made critical decisions regarding the safety of her community and any royal refugees within the walls. Her authority extended beyond the cloister to encompass the security of a significant stronghold. Even in times of peace, the architectural legacy of its fortress past would have been ever present. The thick walls, the defensive towers, and the carefully controlled access points were a constant reminder that this was a place that could stand its ground. The nuns lived within an environment that was both a sanctuary and a stronghold, their daily prayers echoing within walls designed to repel invaders. Santa Clara Monastery in Tordesillas, therefore, stands as a compelling example of a medieval convent that, by its very inheritance and continued strategic importance, functioned as a formidable fortress, securing not just the spiritual lives of its inhabitants, but also the physical safety of those who sought refuge within its royal and powerful walls. Number 4. Nonnberg Abbey, Salzburg, Austria. High above the charming city of Salzburg, Austria, clinging to the side of the Monksberg mountain, stands Nonnberg Abbey. This Benedictine nunnery, one of the oldest continuously existing convents in the German-speaking world, founded around 712 by Saint Rupert, is not merely ancient, it is a prime example of a medieval convent that was designed and continually adapted to function as a powerful mountain fortress. Its strategic location, robust construction, and enduring history of defense against threats paint a clear picture of its dual role. The very choice of Nonnberg's location speaks volumes about its defensive purpose. Perched high on a steep rocky outcrop, it commands a sweeping view of the city of Salzburg and the surrounding valleys. This elevated position provided a natural advantage, making any approach by an attacking force extremely difficult. An army would have to contend with the treacherous climb, making them vulnerable to defenders positioned within the abbey's fortifications. This natural protection was supplemented by human ingenuity. Throughout the medieval period, Nonnberg Abbey was systematically fortified. Its most prominent defensive features are its massive, high stone walls, which encircle the entire complex. These walls, built with thick, unyielding masonry, were designed to withstand sieges and provide an impenetrable barrier. They were not merely decorative or for spiritual enclosure. They were formidable defensive structures, their thickness and height indicating a clear military purpose. Historical records and archaeological surveys confirm that these walls were continuously strengthened and repaired over centuries. Showing a consistent commitment to security, access to the abbey was controlled by heavily fortified gates. These gates were likely multi-layered, perhaps featuring strong wooden doors reinforced with iron and often protected by a gatehouse where guards would be stationed. The narrow winding paths leading up to the abbey also contributed to its defensibility, forcing attackers into constricted approaches where they could be easily ambushed or repelled. The main abbey church, a prominent feature of the complex, also contributed to its defensive capabilities. Built with sturdy stone walls, it could serve as a final redoubt in the event of a breach of the outer defenses. Its thick walls and minimal high-set windows offered protection, and the height of the church itself provided excellent vantage points for observation over the city below. Cloisters and other monastic buildings were similarly constructed with solidity in mind, creating a series of interlocking defensive positions within the complex. Nonnberg Abbey's history is punctuated by periods of threat and defense. As a wealthy and influential institution, it was often a target for both secular and ecclesiastical powers. The city of Salzburg itself, being an important archbishopric, was frequently embroiled in conflicts, and the abbey, overlooking the city, would have been a key strategic point. During sieges of Salzburg, Nonnberg Abbey could serve as a secure refuge for the city's inhabitants or a vital lookout post for its defenders. Chroniclers from the 12th to 15th centuries occasionally describe the abbey's role during military operations, highlighting its capacity to withstand assaults. For instance, during the conflicts of the 13th and 14th centuries between the Prince Archbishops of Salzburg and various noble families or even other ecclesiastical powers, the strength of Nonnberg's defenses would have been paramount. The abbess, a figure of considerable authority and often of noble lineage, would have been responsible for not only the spiritual welfare of her community, but also its physical security. This meant organizing watch duties, ensuring provisions were stockpiled for a siege, and perhaps even overseeing a small contingent of lay defenders. She had to be a skilled administrator and negotiator, capable of dealing with the powerful secular lords who often coveted the abbey's wealth or strategic position. The wealth of Nonnberg, derived from extensive landholdings, tithes, and donations, allowed for the continuous upkeep and enhancement of its fortifications. The nuns had the resources to hire masons, laborers, and military engineers if needed, ensuring that their defenses remained robust and up to date with contemporary siegecraft. This financial independence was crucial to its survival as a fortified stronghold. Even in times of peace, the imposing presence of Nonnberg Abbey atop the Monksberg would have served as a deterrent. Its very appearance communicated strength and resilience, a message to any would-be aggressor that this was not an easy target. The nuns, living within these formidable walls, were part of a community that was both a spiritual haven and a powerful bulwark. Nonnberg Abbey stands as a living testament to the dual nature of some medieval convents, places of profound spiritual devotion that were simultaneously impregnable fortresses, standing firm against the tides of time and conflict, their stone walls whispering tales of centuries of resilience. Number 5. Gandersheim Abbey, Germany. In the heart of Lower Saxony, Germany, lies Gandersheim Abbey, a foundation of immense historical significance that epitomized the concept of a princely convent and, crucially, functioned as a powerful medieval fortress. Founded in 852 by Duke Leoldolf of Saxony and his wife Oda, and later granted imperial immediacy, Gandersheim was not just a spiritual center. It was a political powerhouse with the resources and the architectural might to defend its considerable privileges. Its story is one of powerful abbesses, imperial conflicts, and formidable fortifications. Gandersheim's imperial status meant that its abbesses held an extraordinary degree of temporal power. They were not merely spiritual leaders, but veritable princesses, ruling over vast territories, administering justice, and even having their own minting rights. This level of autonomy and influence inevitably drew the abbey into the complex web of medieval German politics, often necessitating strong defensive measures to protect its autonomy and wealth from ambitious secular lords or rival ecclesiastical powers. Was enclosed by extensive and robust walls, built of durable stone that would have been continuously reinforced and heightened over the centuries. These walls were thick enough to withstand the impact of early siege engines and provided a secure perimeter around the valuable assets within. The magnificent abbey church, the residences of the abbesses, the extensive libraries, and the accumulated treasures. Chronicles from the 10th century mention the strength of Gandersheim's fortifications, indicating their strategic importance. Access to the abbey was meticulously controlled through powerful gatehouses. These were not simple doorways, but fortified structures, likely featuring heavy oak doors, reinforced with iron, a portcullis, and possibly even a drawbridge if the terrain or a moat allowed for it. The gatehouses would have been manned by guards, often drawn from the abbey's own retainers or mercenaries hired by the abbess, who controlled entry and exit, vital for security in an unstable era. The design of these gatehouses would have incorporated defensive features like arrow slits or guard rooms, allowing for effective resistance against intruders. The strategic importance of Gandersheim was heightened by its position. While not on a dramatic hilltop like Nonnberg, it controlled significant land routes and access to agricultural wealth, making it a valuable prize for anyone seeking to expand their influence. The abbess, as a territorial ruler, had the right and the responsibility to maintain a force for defense, ensuring that her abbey and its subjects were protected. One of the most famous episodes that highlights Gandersheim's fortress role was the Gandersheim controversy of the late 10th and early 11th centuries. This was a prolonged dispute over the abbey's jurisdiction between the powerful Archbishop of Mainz and the Bishop of Hildesheim. The abbesses of Gandersheim, particularly the formidable Sophia, daughter of Emperor Otto II, defiantly asserted their imperial immediacy. This conflict was not just a theological or legal battle. It frequently escalated into armed confrontations. Imperial documents and contemporary chronicles describe how the abbess and her supporters fortified the abbey, prepared for sieges, and even raised troops to defend their rights against armed attempts to enforce external jurisdiction. The very existence of such a protracted, often violent dispute dusks the abbey's tangible power and its capacity for military self-defense. During these periods of tension, the abbey's defenses would have been fully activated. Provisions would be stockpiled, the gates secured, and watchmen posted on the walls. The residential buildings within the complex, particularly the abbess's own quarters, were often built with defensive strength in mind, featuring thick walls and minimal ground-level access acting as a final stronghold. The wealth of Gandersheim, stemming from vast land holdings and imperial privileges, was instrumental in its ability to maintain such fortifications. The abbesses had the financial resources to hire skilled masons for construction and repair, to pay for guards, and to purchase military supplies. This economic power underpinned their temporal authority and their ability to defend their independent status. Gandersheim Abbey, therefore, was far more than a spiritual sanctuary. It was a political entity, a territorial power, and a fortified stronghold whose walls and gates were designed to repel attackers and protect its princely abbess and her community. It served as a powerful reminder that in the medieval world, even houses of God, particularly those endowed with imperial power, often needed to look and act like fortresses to survive and thrive. Its enduring legacy is a testament to the strength and resilience of its female rulers and the formidable defenses that guarded their independence. Number 6. Quedlinburg Abbey, Germany. Perched majestically atop a sandstone cliff, overlooking the city of Quedlinburg in Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, stands the former Imperial Abbey of Quedlinburg. Founded in 936 by Otto the Great, the first Holy Roman Emperor, and his mother Matilda, this convent was not just a center of spiritual devotion. It was a fortress, a seat of immense political power, and a symbol of imperial authority throughout the medieval period. Strategic location, extensive fortifications, and the formidable influence of its abbesses place it firmly among the ranks of convents that operated as true strongholds. The location of Quedlinburg Abbey is its first and most striking defensive attribute. Built on a commanding plateau, it offers a natural advantage, making any assault from below an arduous task. The steep cliffs on several sides provided natural protection, and access was controlled by carefully planned approaches that could be easily defended. This strategic positioning was a deliberate choice by its imperial founders, who intended for it to be a secure royal residence and a powerful imperial institution. From its earliest days, Quedlinburg was heavily fortified. The entire abbey complex, encompassing the collegiate church, residential buildings, and administrative offices, was enclosed by massive, high stone walls. These walls were built with remarkable thickness and solidity, designed to withstand the siege warfare of the Middle Ages. Historical records and archaeological findings confirm that these fortifications were regularly upgraded and maintained throughout the centuries, reflecting a continuous concern for defense. The walls often incorporated watchtowers, providing vigilant oversight of the surrounding landscape and early warning of approaching threats. Access to the abbey was through heavily fortified gatehouses, true bastions of defense. These gatehouses would have featured multiple layers of protection, including sturdy wooden doors, reinforced with iron, and often a portcullis that could be raised or lowered to control entry. They would have been designed with features like arrow slits and perhaps even murder holes, to allow defenders to repel attackers attempting to breach the entrance. These gates were not merely ceremonial. They were critical choke points, manned by the abbey's own guards or a small military retinue maintained by the abbess. The abbesses of Quedlinburg were not merely spiritual leaders, they were powerful princely abbesses who held the rank of princes of the Holy Roman Empire. They ruled vast territories, commanded vassals, administered justice, and played a significant role in imperial politics. This temporal power meant they had the responsibility and the means to defend their territories and their abbey. They would have had their own financial resources derived from extensive land holdings and imperial privileges, which allowed them to fund the construction and maintenance of their formidable defenses. Throughout the medieval period, Quedlinburg was a frequent site of imperial assemblies, synods, and other important political gatherings, underscoring its strategic importance. Its strong fortifications made it a safe haven for emperors, nobles, and their retinues during times of unrest. Historical accounts from the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries often describe the abbey as an impregnable stronghold, capable of deterring would-be attackers. One vivid example of Quedlinburg's role as a fortress comes from the various succession crises and princely feuds that plagued the Holy Roman Empire. During such conflicts, the abbey would often be put on high alert. The abbess would oversee the stocking of provisions, the readiness of the defenses, and the organization of the garrison. While nuns did not typically engage in combat, the abbey employed a contingent of lay servants and guards, and in times of extreme threat, local nobility or imperial troops might be stationed there to bolster its defenses. The very presence of the abbey's formidable walls would deter many smaller raiding parties, forcing them to seek easier targets. Treasury of Quedlinburg, filled with priceless relics, jewels, and historical documents, made it an incredibly valuable target. The sophisticated defensive system was therefore essential to protect this wealth, which was not only material, but also symbolic of its imperial connections and spiritual authority. The abbesses, through their immense power and wealth, ensured that the abbey remained a bastion of security and a formidable deterrent against any who sought to challenge its authority or plunder its riches. Quedlinburg Abbey stands as a monumental testament to the fusion of spiritual devotion and temporal power, where a community of women oversaw a stronghold that rivaled any secular castle in its defensive capabilities and strategics of the Holy Roman Empire. Number 7. Las Huelgas, Burgos, Spain. In the dry, windswept plains near Burgos, Spain, stands the royal monastery of Las Huelgas. Founded in 1187 by King Alfonso VIII of Castile and his formidable wife, Eleanor of England, daughter of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. This Cistercian nunnery was far more than a religious house. It was a colossal royal necropolis, a vast economic powerhouse, and fundamentally a heavily fortified complex that functioned as a true fortress in medieval Castile. Sheer scale strategic importance and robust architecture made it an impregnable stronghold for centuries. The location of Las Huelgas was chosen with both spiritual and strategic considerations. While not on a towering cliff, it was situated on a slightly elevated plain outside Burgos, controlling access points to the city and major roadways. This positioning meant it was a key strategic point, capable of dominating the surrounding area and serving as a crucial base for royal operations, as well as a place of refuge. From its inception, Las Huelgas was endowed with immense wealth and privileges, granting it extensive land holdings, numerous villages, and vast revenues. This wealth allowed the abbesses to undertake massive construction projects, not just for the abbey church and cloister, but for extensive defensive structures. The complex was enclosed by imposing thick stone walls, some reaching significant heights, designed to withstand the siege engines and military tactics of the medieval era. These walls were built with an eye towards fortification, meant to repel external threats and provide an impenetrable perimeter around the vast monastic city within. Las Huelgas featured impressive defensive towers integrated into its perimeter walls. These towers, common in castles, served as watchtowers, providing vantage points for observation and as strong points for defense, allowing archers or crossbowmen to rain down projectiles on attackers. The sheer number of these towers and their robust construction indicates a clear military purpose beyond mere enclosure. Access to the monastery was controlled by substantial gatehouses. These were not simple entryways but fortified structures, likely featuring heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron, a portcullis, and possibly even a drawbridge if a moat or ditch was present. The gatehouses would have been manned by a significant contingent of guards drawn from the monastery's extensive retinue, who would strictly control who entered and exited the complex, especially during times of conflict. The internal layout of Las Huelgas also reflected a defensive mindset. The various courtyards and buildings, the grand church, the royal pantheon, the cloister, End of chapter. House and extensive residential quarters for the hundreds of nuns, servants, and lay personnel were arranged in a way that, even if an outer wall was breached, provided further layers of defense. The massive stone buildings themselves, with their thick walls and secure doors, could serve as secondary strongholds. The Abbess of Las Huelgas was arguably one of the most powerful women in medieval Europe. She held quasi-episcopal powers, ruling over a vast spiritual and temporal domain, including numerous convents and parishes. Her influence extended far beyond the cloister, and she was often a close advisor to the Castilian monarchy. This immense power meant she had the authority and resources to maintain and command a significant force for defense. She effectively acted as a feudal lord, responsible for the protection of her vast properties and thousands of subjects throughout its history. Las Huelgas faced numerous threats. The medieval kingdoms of Iberia were frequently embroiled in wars, both internal civil conflicts and external struggles against the Muslim territories to the south. Being a royal foundation of immense wealth and strategic importance, Las Huelgas was a prime target. Historical chronicles often describe the monastery being put on high alert, or providing refuge to royal family members, nobles, and their retainers during periods of intense warfare. For example, during the turbulent reign of King Peter the Cruel in the 14th century, the monastery's defenses would have been crucial for its survival and the protection of its royal treasures and occupants. Its robust walls deterred many attempts to attack or lay siege to the complex. The monastery served as a repository for royal jewels, important documents, and other valuable assets, making its fortification essential. Its immense granaries and storerooms meant it could withstand long sieges, providing for its large community and any refugees sheltering within its walls. The abbesses, through their immense political acumen and temporal power, ensured that Las Huelgas remained an unyielding bastion throughout the unpredictable and often violent medieval period, a stark testament to the formidable nature of a convent built to serve God, royalty, and its own survival as an enduring fortress.